had my door cracked to my office today as I was working on this message. Just listening to the rain come down. It was so awesome and so calming that I fell asleep. No, I'm just kidding. But I'm excited to be here tonight. I'm always excited to be here because I get to see you guys and I get to open up the Word of God. Tonight we are going to be starting a two-part message in the book of Esther. So we're going to look at the first half of Esther today, and then in 2 weeks... I don't know what happened, but something happened, and we got to fight it. Okay. That's all good. It's just the way it goes. I'll be honest with you. What it probably is we had a leak from all the rain, and it rained onto our box, and so we had to move our box. So I just got to be careful where I walk. So, Brendan, these guys, they just love you.
Yeah, I know. My fault, guys. My fault.
So anyway, so we're in a two-part series on Esther, starting tonight, and then next week there is no Amplified because it's Thanksgiving, so you'll have to come back the following week in December, I believe it's December 3rd or 4th, and come back and hear the rest of the story. But here's the deal, and I'm already wasting time, and that's okay, but the hardest part about bringing a message to you guys is what I don't say, all right? Because I do a ton of research for all of these messages and all of these passages, and sometimes you come to a message like Esther, and there's so many details and so many things and so much that I want to say that it becomes difficult to put the sermon together because I just want to tell you everything that I learned because it's awesome and it's amazing. So tonight, buckle up, get out your blankets. We're going to be here for about an hour. And no, I'm just kidding. We're not going to do that. I cut a bunch of stuff out. But you are going to need to listen fast because if you don't listen fast enough, I can't get through everything I want to. So tonight, we're going to be looking at Esther. And in order to kind of feel where they're coming from, I want to talk to you guys about something. I want to talk to you about, have you ever felt as if you were an outcast? Maybe you felt like an outcast at home because your parents seemed to like your brother or sister better than you. Maybe you had friends. Maybe you had friends at school that you thought were your friends, but then all of a sudden you showed up one day and everybody was ignoring you. Or maybe you just happened to move to a new place and you show up and you feel like you're out of place. A lot of times when that happens to us, because I'm sure everybody in this room has experienced one of those. I know I have experienced multiples of those. All right? And I felt like an outcast. I felt like I didn't belong. And a lot of times, you feel like there's no way out. I'm trapped. I'm never going to get through this. I'm never going to be able to push through. And that's what we're going to be looking at tonight. We're going to be continuing this journey through the Old Testament. And right now where we're at is Israel is captive by Persia. Babylon was their original captors. They were conquered by Persia. And we're going to see today how they become even more outcast than they were before. Yes, sir. We already learned about Nebuchadnezzar. He was 4 or 5 weeks ago. But we are going to learn about somebody that's just interesting. Mesopotamia, Nebuchadnezzar? Yeah, no, they're great. If you want, you can go to our YouTube page, Valley Baptist MSM, and you can look back and you can see those messages that we preached on Nebuchadnezzar, and you can learn about it. All right? Because it's a pretty cool guy, and we had a lot of good lessons. But tonight you're going to learn about another king that you guys will probably be coming up in history as you go through. So pay attention if you love history. Tonight we are going to be learning, and here's how I'm going to do this tonight. It's going to be different than some of the messages that we've done before. I'm going to introduce you to the main characters. And then I'm going to go through the story so I can tell it faster and I don't have to describe them. But tonight we're going to be looking at a king by the name of, how do I say his name? Ahasuerus. Okay? Ahasuerus. And you guys are like, Ahasuerus? I thought you said this was a guy we're going to know. I don't know who that guy is. Well, there is a little bit of debate as to who Ahasuerus is. But in all the research that I've done and all the studying that I've done, I've narrowed it down to 2 Persian kings. And there's a lot of information that it could be either of them. And so really it just comes down to who you think it is. And for me, I fall in a specific camp. And that is, I believe that Ahasuerus is actually a king by the name of Xerxes, or he's better known as King Xerxes. Now, some of you may know who he is, some of you may not know who he is, but to kind of put in context who Xerxes is, how many of you guys have heard of the 300 Spartans who fought off the Persian army at Thermopylae for 3 days and then died? Most of us have heard about those 300 Spartans, okay? So, if you haven't, you will learn about them in your history classes, and those 300 Spartans were facing off against this guy who called himself the God King, and his name was Xerxes. And that's exactly who this is. So as you're going through history, you learn about King Xerxes, who tried to invade Greece, and he lost. That's who this is. Okay, to the best of my knowledge and ability, that's who it is. It's either him or it's his son, Artaxerxes. But I'm pretty positive that it is Xerxes. That's who this is. Now, Xerxes was an interesting guy. He was brought up in royalty. His father helped create the largest empire in the world, from India down to Egypt, and he became the ruler. But because of this, he was very spoiled, and he was very proud, but he was also very paranoid. And he was always looking over his back, and he was very moody. He would switch from happy to angry to frustrated very, very quickly. And so that's who he is. So he's going to be one of the main characters. Another character we're going to find is Haman. All right? Haman was a rich young man who slowly worked his way up in the courts of the king until one day Xerxes made him his top consultant. All right? His number one guy. What do I have? Advisor. He became his number one advisor. And overall the kingdom. And he was also considered an enemy to the Jews. And we're going to find out how that comes into play. The next character is a Jewish man by the name of Mordecai. He was captured in Babylon. No, wrong Mordecai. Wrong Mordecai. All right? Now, this is a different guy. This isn't a bird. This is an actual human being. All right? And now I lost my complete train of thought. Mordecai. Mordecai was a Benjaminite, all right? And he worked in the gate of the king's palace, and he was a scribe, and he helped take down rules and things that would happen in the palace, okay? He was also the legal guardian to a young lady by the name of Hadassah, okay? And he was also her cousin. Her parents died. He was a little bit older. He adopted her to be his own. And he raised her and brought her up. Now, Hadassah is better known as Esther, the main character in our book. All right? And she was known to be very beautiful. And the Bible even says she had a fine bodily form. All right? So she was an amazing young lady. So those are the 4 characters, the 4 main characters that we're going to see in this story. So now it's time to get to the story. And you guys need to listen faster because you're not getting the information fast enough, right? We're all right? So the story starts, I believe it starts after Xerxes was defeated by the Greeks. And he comes home, and he's feeling kind of down, and he wants to make himself feel better. So for 180, I think it's 180 or 182 days, he demonstrates his power and his wealth in all of the city. All right? And he has these big parades, he has big banquets, all of these types of things. At the end at the end of the 180 days, he decides to throw this feast. And this feast lasted at least 7 days. And the reason I say at least 7 days is because on the 7th day, it says that the wine had made him feel really good. Basically, he was drunk. All right? He was drunk and he had lost it. All right? And he decided that he needed to build himself up some more. So he called for his wife, the queen, and her name was Vashti. And he says, I want you to come and I'm going to show you off to all of my men and how beautiful you are. And she goes, you're drunk. I'm throwing a party too, and I'm not going to come and be an object. I don't know what she said exactly, but she said no. All right? She said, I'm not coming. And this angered him tremendously. And he became furious. And so he goes to whom he considered his seven closest advisors. And he goes, what should we do to Vashti? And these guys crack me up. I love this. These guys crack me up. Because they sit there and they go, okay, King, we've got a problem. The queen denied your command. If word gets out that she refused your request, then all the other women in the kingdom are going to start ignoring their husbands. And we can't have that. All right? They have to obey us no matter what we say. And I was laughing when I was reading this because I'm like, these guys are nuts. What's wrong with them? Who cares? You know, but they were concerned about this for some reason. All right? And so they go, you have to punish her. And so basically what they come up with is that she's going to be removed as queen and she's going to be banished from the kingdom. All right? So they kick her out. She's gone. He has no more queen. Well, a few days later, he sobers up and his anger kind of goes away. And all of a sudden he realizes, I don't have a queen. What am I going to do? So he goes to his 7 advisors again and he goes, what are we going to do? And they go, let's go throughout all the land, and any beautiful woman we see, let's bring her into the palace. Let's give them a whole year of spa days. That sounds great, right? A whole year of spa days. Massages, baths, ointments, oils, nails, hair, all kinds of stuff. All right? Let's make them as beautiful as possible. Then we will parade them one by one in front of the king, and each of them will get a night with the king, and we'll be able to, he can look at them, and if one pleases him, then she can become the queen. All right? And so that's what they do. So they go out, and there's a lot of women. Hey, guys, hey, what are you doing? Why are you sitting there fighting over a piece of paper? We can get you another one. There's one right behind you. All right? So here's the deal. They go out and they start gathering up women. And there's a lot of these ladies who come voluntarily. But the text tells us that Esther was taken. It wasn't necessarily a voluntary thing for her. And she was taken because of her beauty. And they brought her into the palace. And before she left, Mordecai told her, make sure you keep who you are and your heritage a secret. All right? Make sure you don't tell anybody because it'll be safer for you that way. So she goes for a whole year. And then finally she gets her opportunity to come before the king. And she comes before him and he is spellbound. You could call it love at first sight. He sees her, she's more beautiful than anybody else. He falls in love with her and he says, you will be my queen. And he makes her queen. And he holds a banquet and everything's great and fun. Except for those other ladies that came. They just got swept under the rug and put in a back room in the palace and got to be part of one of his wives. One of his many wives that he had. But she, being one of these, was at least the top one. And she got to become queen. And so Esther becomes queen. Well, right after she becomes queen, a plot is hatched by a couple of the servants to take the life of Xerxes. Mordecai discovers it, gets the information to Esther. Esther gets the information to the king, and the king's life is saved. Now, the king writes down the record that Mordecai saved him in his logs, but he never did anything for Mordecai. And we'll find out why that's important in 2 weeks. But Mordecai saves the king's life. And at this same time, that young man by the name of Haman makes his rise and becomes the top ruler in Persia. Now, being the top ruler in Persia comes with perks. Not only do you get a lot of money, not only do you get a lot of fame, but everybody is to worship you. Remember, Xerxes thought he was a god, all right? He thought that he was not only a king, but that he was a god king, and that's the way he looked at himself. So anyone that served him directly was considered worthy of worship or worthy of praise. So anytime he came walking through the town, you had to bow down and you had to pay homage to him. But one day he's walking down through the king's gate, and Mordecai is there, and everybody bows down except for Mordecai. And for some reason, Mordecai has a change of heart. Because instead of hiding who he was like he told Esther to do, he went and he said, I'm not going to bow down. That's not who I am. I'm a Jew of Israel, and I'm not going to bow down before you. And Mordecai is furious. He can't believe that this Jewish man would resist him of bowing down. And he's really frustrated, and he's really angry. All right? And so Mordecai hatches a plan. He goes, you know what? I'm not just going to, not Mordecai, Haman. Haman hatches a plan. I said that backwards for like the last 5 minutes. Haman hatches a plan. He goes, I'm not just going to kill Mordecai. I'm going to kill every Jew in the land of Persia. And so he goes to King Xerxes, and he goes up to him, and he tells this big fat lie. He goes, hey, King Xerxes, you are a great God king. You are worthy of worship. Everybody should love you. Everybody should worship you. And Xerxes is like, yeah, I know. I'm that guy. Yeah, that's great. And he's just bringing it on. He goes, but, Xerxes, there is one group of people, and they live by their own rules. They worship their own gods. They are a threat to you, and they should not be trusted. And he says, you know what? If you want, I will deal with them for you. And not only will I deal with them for you, I will pay the money that it costs to have them dealt with. So he hears this and he goes, I like that. Deal with it. You're my advisor. You're the guy in charge. You go ahead and take care of it. So he gives him his signet ring, and he sends him out to get these things done. Now, he didn't ask any questions as to what deal with them meant. But what Mordecai did, now that he had the king's ring and signet, is he hatched a plan to kill every Jew in the Persian Empire. How many of you guys have heard of those movies, The Purge? All right? Okay, don't ever watch it. I can't watch those scary movies. But that's basically what they plan to do. They basically plan to have a purge, and they sent out letters to all the corners of Persia saying, rise up on a certain date. All right? And it was like in the month of Tetatron or something like that. I don't know when it was. I don't remember. But they say there will be a certain date, and you are going to rise up, and you are going to slaughter any Jew that you find. And so they plan to annihilate him. Well, this gets back to Mordecai. All right? And Mordecai hears about this, and he is heartbroken. And he and several other Jews go to the center of town, outside the gate of the king's palace. They tear their clothes, they put on sackcloth, and they begin mourning in the open square. And this is crazy. Because remember, Xerxes, he's a little bit moody, he's a little bit paranoid, all right? And he doesn't like to hear bad news. So if he was to see these guys mourning, he's going to lose it and probably have them killed. Well, word gets to Esther that he's mourning and wailing and making this big display in the middle of town, and she freaks out because she thinks Mordecai is going to get killed. So she sends him clothes, but he refuses. So she sends a servant and goes, why'd you refuse my clothes? And he sends her and gives her a message of all the things that Haman had done. Because you have to remember, even though Esther was the queen, she didn't see the king every day. She was kept separate. She was kept in her own wing. She had no clue what had just transpired. And so it isn't until Mordecai lets her know that she finds out that she's in danger, because she's a Jew, and she could be killed just as easily as everybody else. Well, she sends back a message to Mordecai, reminding him, hey Mordecai, don't forget, I can't approach the king. The law says that any woman or man that approaches the king that is not invited, they will immediately be put to death. So the moment I enter into his palace, I will be killed unless he extends his scepter. She goes, I can't do that. You got to remember, I can't be the one because of that. And besides, he hasn't called me to him in over 30 days. So what makes me think that he's going to call me anytime soon? So I don't know if I'll be able to help you. And Mordecai writes back, and he's kind of blunt. And he goes, do you really think you'll be safe up there all high in your palace? He goes, you won't be? And here's the deal. If you refuse to help us, I'm not worried because God will find another way to deliver us. And then he tells her this. But maybe God puts you in your position for this very reason. Maybe God placed you there so that you could come and speak to the king on behalf. So Esther gets the message. She thinks about it. She understands the problem. The people of Israel are facing death, and so is she. And so she writes back to him. She says, Mordecai gathered up all of the Israelites in the city. Go and fast and pray for 3 days. I will do the same with my servants. And on the third day, I will approach the king. And when I go to him, if I die, then I die. And that's what we're going to read the story for tonight. I know, I'm sorry. You're going to have to come back and hear the rest. But here's the thing. Here's the thing. Or you can come back in 2 weeks, or you can go home and start in chapter 5 with Esther and read the story. All right? But here's the deal. Here's the deal. This story leaves us in a tough spot, right? You guys want to hear the rest of the story because you're like, what happens? They're all facing death. What's going to happen to Esther? What's going to happen to the Jews? And guys, a lot of times, that's the way we feel, right? When we feel like we're outcasts, when we feel that we're foreigners in a crazy land, when we move to a new school and no one wants to be our friend. And that happens to us all the time. But here's the deal. God's people were foreigners in the land. And they were facing not only being outcasts, but being wiped out. And that's a tough place to be. They didn't fit in with those they followed. They did not worship the Persian gods. And now, they were facing extinction. Because they were different. Because no one liked them. Because people thought that they were a threat because they were different. And for us, it's the same thing. For us, we feel like we're odd or we're weird, that no one likes us. We feel like outcasts sometimes. Everyone in this room has probably felt that way one way or another. Your friends abandoned you. Your sister or brother had a friend over and you thought you were going to hang out with them and they said, no, get out of here, we don't like you. And they ran off and did their own thing, right? And so we feel like outcasts. We feel like we're on the outside looking in. Whether you've been bullied or whether you've been the bully, you feel the same way. But there's hope, guys. We don't have to feel like outcasts. Because there's someone who will always accept us. And there is a God that is sovereign and has a sovereign plan for us. And the best thing is all we have to do is believe in Him. Mordecai was that way. Mordecai believed in God's sovereign plan for deliverance. Didn't he? What did he do? He started mourning, right? Well, that looks like he's kind of given up. That he's mourning his death. But really, Mordecai was mourning for two reasons. Number one, he was mourning because for repentance, to repent to God. And number two, he was mourning to get the attention of Esther. He didn't have the freedom to just walk up to the palace and go, "Hey cousin, what's up?" No, she was under high guard. So he had to figure out a way to get a message to her. And so he did that by mourning. And it worked, didn't it? Esther came to him and said, "Hey, we're good to go. What's going on? What's happening?" Because he saw not the trouble they were in, not the hopelessness, not the fact that they were outsiders. He saw the fact that Esther, as queen, was put there by God. And he believed that if it wasn't Esther, that God would still provide deliverance. And he tells her that. Verse 14 of chapter 4, he says, verse 13. Mordecai told the messengers to reply to Esther, "Don't think that you will escape the fate of the Jews because you are in the king's palace. If you keep silent at this time, liberation and deliverance will come to the Jewish people from another place." He believed that whether Esther agreed or not, that if he trusted in God, deliverance would come. And that's what we have to do, guys. When we feel abandoned, when we feel outcast, we need to lean on God. We need to turn to Him. We need to trust that He will deliver us. Because that's what He promises. And that's what He'll do. Because God has a sovereign plan for us. When you feel alone, when you feel like an outsider, do you complain and run to things of this world that will help you? Or do you turn and lean on God to bring you through? That's the question you have to ask. That's the actions you have to take. And then lastly tonight is this. Esther was about to risk her life for the people. Contrary to the great love story that a lot of people think Esther is, there was a lot of fear. There's a whole lot more to it. She didn't get to be this romantic husband and wife, king and queen that we know of. She was just one of many. Now, she happened to be the one of many. But it wasn't like she was free to come and go as queen. If she went before the king uninvited, he could have her put to death. He's already got rid of her predecessor. Vashti was gone. All because she refused his command. Esther was facing a tough situation. It was her or her people. And it could have been both. It might be both. But she had a choice to make. And even though she didn't know the outcome, she continued to move forward. Because that's what God asks us to do. Guys, when we read the Bible and we look at all of these men and women of faith, we get to see the end. Oh, well, of course Esther was going to go before King Xerxes and talk to him. Why wouldn't she? God's going to deliver her. It's going to be great. It's going to be awesome. Everything's going to work out. Well, that's because we can see the end. But if you want to know the truth, she had no clue what was going to happen. She thought for sure that she was going to die, and she says it. When I die, I die. But not all the men of faith, not all the women of faith ended up in great situations. Jesus' 12 disciples were all martyred, stoned, beat, crucified, burned at the stake, all of those things. They didn't know the outcome, but they still moved forward in faith. They were considered outsiders. They were considered they were bullied all of the time. But that didn't stop them from moving forward. Because they were hopeful for deliverance. And here's the best part about God, guys. A lot of times we look at deliverance as if God needs to deliver by our earthly standards. Well, God's going to deliver for Esther. He's going to save them from Haman. He's going to save them from the king of Persia. But what if he didn't? Did God still deliver? The answer is yes. Because God's deliverance is not based on human or worldly standards. Guys, for those of us who trust in God, for those of us who put our faith in God, we are foreigners in this world. We are children of God, not children of this world. And God has a home for us. And our deliverance may not come through what we want or what we hope to happen, but what His deliverance is the promise of eternal life. The promise of a new heaven, a new earth, and living in paradise as His children. So don't look at being an outcast. Don't look at being a foreigner. Don't look at being bullied as the end. Because God will deliver. He may not deliver you from being an outcast. He may not deliver you from being bullied. But there will come a time where if you put your faith in Him, He will deliver you into His kingdom. Because when God makes a promise, He keeps that promise. Let's bow our heads together. Here in just a minute, Kyle is going to come up and he's going to start playing a song. And during that song, I want to invite you to do something. I want to invite you to step out and come to know Jesus. If maybe you're sitting here tonight and you say, Pastor Luke, I've been there. I've been bullied. I am being bullied. I'm an outcast. No one likes me. No one cares for me.